everyone. Welcome to the Rooted Connections podcast. My name is Uju.
And my name's Pam. Welcome,
Welcome.
everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Always, always. So, how are you?
I feel a little bit overwhelmed this week, but I'm okay. I'm okay. Just tired.
Overwhelmed.
Yeah.
What's up?
No, nothing major. Just tired. I think it's just sometimes life just life, isn't it?
That's fair.
And
That's fair.
trying to combine too many things at the same time, it just takes a toll. But we move.
So, guys, remember I said this is going to be part of our therapy session. So, this is it. So, forgive us. We're just catching up. For me this week, I would say it was long.
Hmm.
I think that we're getting to that season where things are just long. But I'm happy, I'm alive, I'm well.
Yeah. And I think in all of that, there's always something to be grateful for. There's always something to in all the chaos. There's always something that you can look back and think, okay, actually, it's not too bad. Could be
Gratitude.
better, but where I am right now, I'm good.
To be honest, I often, in moments of overwhelm, I think that's for me is one of the things that help is looking back on where I was.
Mm,
And one of the things I'm always thankful for is growth.
absolutely.
If despite certain things going wrong, but if I can look back and see growth in certain areas, I know that okay, whatever it is that is stressing me out at the moment,
Mm, yeah,
in a few years time, it probably won't
won't be
really
there.
it wouldn't be even relevant, because I think now we're in that stage where that middle of life, isn't it, where you're juggling so many different hats, your children are growing and you're having to adapt to that, and there's always that nagging
Mm,
feeling at the back of your mind. I don't know about you, but with your children, there's always that nagging feeling at the back of my mind, like I'm not doing enough.
100%. And I think I think as parents, we'll always deal with that guilt of we can be better or we can do better. But responding to some of what you were just talking about, growth, it's interesting. I saw a quote somewhere. I'm just paraphrasing because I can't remember word for word what it said, but the gist of it was sometimes growth requires still,
Mm.
where we always feel that we need to be doing
To be
things to
moving.
move, but sometimes growth just requires you to just take stock where you are at the moment and what you need to be grateful for, what you need to work towards. But for some people, we just feel like we haven't achieved this, so we're driving ourselves, and that is where the overwhelming feeling then comes in.
Mm.
So, when you're starting to feel that urge to rest, you know. And I say that because it's not something I do. So in a way, I'm talking to myself. Rest is so important because rest gives your mind that rejig,
Yeah.
that's
Rejuvenation.
exactly to be able to see probably what next. Because many times we become quite stuck when we don't allow ourselves to do that. That grace to just actually, I need a minute.
Yeah. Because we're very guilty of even filling the downtime
Mm.
with activity. I remember I was watching something the other day and they were talking about, it was a clip I saw on Instagram, and it was to this point about why is it that we don't rest. And I never really thought about it this way, but when they described, I was like, this makes so much sense. Growing up, if your parents just see you sitting down doing nothing, it was a problem. It's like, why are you sitting down there? Don't you have book to read? Don't you have have you swept? Have you cleaned? Have you do this? Have you done this? Have you done the other thing? So in our consciousness, just sitting down
I think I saw that video as
to
well.
stop
Yeah,
is
yeah,
actually you're not wired to do so.
yeah. I don't realize how much of those things has had such a huge impact on us. And subconsciously, we do it with our children
Oh, of course.
because you feel really uncomfortable when you see your child just chilling. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not. Yeah, I'm guilty. When I just see my children just chilling, I'm thinking, have they done? And I start to ask the question. But sometimes those things remind you, the need to just, they're kids, they're still children. They need to have their own time as well.
It's not even just children, even we too. We
Even
need the
of
time to
course,
just chill.
that's the whole idea. It's so important. Wherever you are in life, sometimes just pause, take a minute. It's
Yeah.
really
I had one of those days yesterday. We went out for breakfast and then we came home and we had this long list of stuff to do. Everybody, and like, okay, let's put a movie. And we ended up watching like three.
I used to
Because, but that's how you know that everyone has kind of like been pushed.
Mm,
And it was like, you know what? We're not doing anything today.
yeah,
And even my children are young, but even they, it's as if even they too just appreciated that we're just chilling.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah,
Okay,
so our
okay.
message to you, chill. Find the
Pause.
time to just pause. And as Pam said, most importantly, restock is
Mm,
rejuvenating and it really helps the mind.
100%. So today, we're delving into a topic that can be a little bit sensitive. So obviously, just look after yourself. If there's anything that we talk about on this episode that you feel uncomfortable with, get help, whatever. But most importantly, it's quite a sensitive topic for many women particularly. But I would say, it does impact or affect some men as well. So we're talking about domestic abuse.
Mhm.
Domestic abuse. So I think the way that we want to sort of navigate this today is we're looking at it from the lens of the understanding and the acceptance of what domestic abuse is from an African, or should I say, from obviously our lived experience of being Nigerian women,
Mhm.
and sort of formative years in Nigeria coming here, and then obviously the responses here. What is the same? What's different? So I'll come to you then. What are the key things that have sort of jumped out at you? Obviously, I know you're a magistrate,
Mhm.
and you probably get you have some of these conversations or things that would come to the door of the court to discuss.
Yeah.
How do you see domestic abuse here in the UK, the responses, and how do you compare it to the mindset or the African understanding for you?
Okay, I think for me, the first thing is the definition of domestic abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even I going into it, my breadth of understanding of what constitutes domestic abuse was not as wide as it should be. And I think that's based on where we're coming from. Um, so we only see domestic abuse where is proper beating,
Yeah, physical.
where it's physical and it's not just okay, he slapped you. Has he slapped you before? No.
What did you
Okay.
do?
So we kind of at that point, our alarm bells are not based on where we're coming from, are not ringing. But domestic abuse is so much broader than just physical. So I think that's the first thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um so that's one of the key differences. What constitutes domestic abuse, the character traits of an abuser
Mm-hmm.
as well. We just go, "Oh, he's a bit what's the word? He's a bit obsessive or he's a bit touchy, or he loves me so much. He's so aware of he's just all about me." So we don't so that's one of the key things that I had to learn in taking on this role, was just how wide
Mm-hmm.
domestic abuse is and what the signs of somebody who is being abused, what it actually looks
Yeah.
like. Because very often, if the person appears bubbly or the person doesn't have, when you watch Nigeria movie, someone that is abused, you have to come with dark sunglasses, tie scarf some way, you get what I mean. So that's the critical thing. that was for me something I had to learn. What does domestic abuse actually look like?
Yeah.
There's financial, there is
Emotional.
emotional,
Mm-hmm.
there's so much, alienation.
Mm.
There's a very wide
Isolation. Yeah. Yeah.
thing. So that's one thing I had to learn. And in terms of, I think ours is even more complex because it's not just cultural, you also have the religious aspect of it as well. I'm Christian, and very often the church has failed a lot of people because we are trying to say we put divorce,
Mm.
God hates divorce, above the well being of the people who are actually in these abusive marriages.
Yeah.
So, someone saying, I'm ready to leave my husband because he's beating me, everyone is like, ah, no, you can't go. What will people say? That what will people say? Gosh. So I think that's the one another key difference for
That's really
me.
interesting.
What will
What will
people
people
say?
say? Yeah.
That doesn't really come into play so much in this society. Is what will people say? They don't really care
No
about
one
that.
cares. No.
Is more people are there. People, not that people don't stay in abusive relationships here, but it's because they cannot leave, or
Mm-hmm.
they are so dependent for whatever reason on the abuser or whatever.
Mm.
But it's not about other people
Yeah.
them staying. That's one other contrast that I've seen. Here a lot of people staying in that relationship is about them
Right.
and their relationship with the abuser, right or wrong,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to in our context where the person
There are
is
other. There's so many other factors that sort
yeah.
of pulling that decision. Interestingly, I remember I saw this video as well on I think it was Instagram, of this woman who, an older woman, who was being interviewed on her. I think it was actually a group of older women, if I remember correctly. But there was this one that stood out for me, and the person that was interviewing her, or sort of, I think it was a similar podcast setting, was asking her about, or the question was asked around, what will, what is enough? What will be enough for you to end your marriage? And she was very, very clear that there was absolutely nothing that would make her leave her husband. And although this is probably another topic, but I think one of the things that came out of that as well was, if your husband abused your child
Oh, I think I remember this video.
sexually, would that be enough reason to end the marriage? And she said no. But that was one. And then there was another one that was about DV, like if your husband was battering you, like beating you, would that be enough to leave? And she said no. And I found that so interesting. Now that I've lived here for so long, I know, again, doing what I do, being a social worker, from the outside looking in, it's so easy for me to judge that woman and be like, why would you remain with an
Hmm.
abuser? Why, But I can almost understand that the society is not forgiving of women, and there is not that soft landing for women who choose to leave because of how they are deemed. I mean, if you go and report that your husband is beating you, the first question that you'll be asked is, what did you do? You know, what did you do to provoke him to beat you? You have a sharp mouth.
Is this your mouth?
You don't even keep quiet. You're not respectful. You're not submissive.
You're not a
As a
Proverbs
wife,
31 woman.
thank you.
Yeah, that's it now. You're not a
Yeah.
Proverbs
Don't think.
31
What
woman.
does the Bible say?
It's a
You know,
woman that keeps her home.
exactly. And we almost protect the abuser and victimize the victim. So we re-traumatize women who go through these experiences where they have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
There's no support. There's no support for them. I know that a lot of organizations now are coming together, and there's a lot more awareness around domestic abuse
Yeah.
in Nigeria. But I still, obviously, these are not funded by government. These are people that, because of just how bad it is, from the goodness of their hearts, they know something needs to be done, so they're doing it. But unfortunately, it's not going far enough to raise the awareness that it needs to raise. And so many women are unfortunately dying, or dying emotionally, physically, whatever, but they're dying in one way or another. There's a cost to it.
100%. I think thankfully, um, it's starting to change a little bit because women as well are being empowered to, they have their own money. Women are seeing other women who have left and are okay. If you see what, so that stigma is starting to reduce a little bit, and I'm thankful for that to an extent that I can think of a few people right now who have walked out of situations that just were not working and are doing okay. But even leaving Nigeria, we come here because you only associate with your people,
Yeah, mostly. Yeah.
and it's not just a black thing. I've seen it with the like South Asians or the Asians. We only associate largely with your community. So to even break away, even in a society like this where there is support, is hard for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think why it's also particularly hard. Yeah, I've said all these Proverbs 31 and a woman holds her. Those things are actually true.
Oh yeah.
Those things are actually in the Bible, but we are using it to beat people the wrong way. We're not teaching these things correctly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
We're using truths but bending it.
We're twisting the truth to a large degree to enable bad behavior. That's my view. We enable bad behavior. Because the other thing as well is, like you said earlier, domestic abuse isn't just the physical.
It's not.
There, and I think largely what the weapon that is used is always the financial. Financial because some women are child because they've had kids, and because they've had children, they've not had the opportunity to they've lost themselves in that process. They've not
Mm-hmm.
been able to go back to school, or they've not been able to get a job, or they've not been able to start some type of business because they've been look. So the man is largely the breadwinner.
Breadwinner.
He's
Mm-hmm.
the one who's earning. So she can't talk to him. she she's largely so any behavior that he deems as disrespectful, he batters her, and she has no one to go to, because that is everything for her. And so we might be looking at her like, why can't you just leave this man? And it's so easy to say that. Why can't you leave? Why are you there? Why are you dying there? But she's the one that knows what's keeping her in that home, because where is she going to go? They're not, and again, there are not that many. And I'm going back to the failures of Nigeria, but they're now coming here as well. The other element to it as well, and some of this plays out here
Of course.
because many migrants, like we talked about in our Jackpot episode, many migrants come here and you don't have recourse to public funds,
Mm.
and sometimes because of childcare, the mother will probably be the one to stay home, look after the kids, while the husband is the one hustling and getting the money.
Mm.
So she also now is dependent on him. And, there's only one income coming in. That then brings tension into the home. Do you understand? So it's really sad. It's really sad because some of those cultural aspects then plays into it, where there's like some of these biblical things that we're talking about
Mm.
comes in, and then when she opens her mouth, like, you're not even appreciating that it's hard for this man. He's the one that is going out, is the one who is earning, is the one that is providing. You need to be a bit more respectful and show more, but who's there for her? Who has she got to turn to? Because I say this from experience, from my profession, and very easily, it's easy for in terms of when we think about safeguarding children, a child should not be exposed to that environment,
Never,
you
never.
know,
Mm.
and it's so easy for us to be, and I say this, very critical of women who choose to remain in domestic abusive relationships, because we're critical of them because we're thinking about, well, aren't you seeing the impact this is having on your children? Aren't you seeing what you're doing to your child? But we're forgetting that sometimes it's not just that. There's other things that are making her stay and choose. And actually, sometimes it's because of the child.
Yeah, so let's delve into that actually, because I would like to talk about like from your, because you interact with these people on a regular basis. So maybe this will help people who are seeing people go through domestic abuse, and like, we think initially like just go, just walk
Mm.
out and leave. So what are the key things that you see that are driving people to stay, other than the obvious, or financial, or I want to stay because of my children? Are there other sort of factors that you've seen, or that are, keeping people rooted in there?
I think one of the key things for me would be the isolation,
Mm.
because you've come to a foreign country, you've you don't really know anyone. This is all new for you, for your children, and so you are a bit lost. You're a bit, it's just you and this man and the children in a foreign land. So you don't really know anybody. You don't know anyone. And so it's so isolating. And then you find yourself now in this difficult situation where, domestic abuse now, and let's say even in Nigeria, maybe it was a thing. Because
Mm.
for many, it's culturally accepted. You
Yeah.
don't really, so then you now come to a country where it's completely frowned on. There's support services in place. The police will respond to it, deal with it in a way that it's still, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still lots of failures here as
Yeah, yeah,
well.
yeah.
But when we're comparing society and societal acceptance, at least the police will offer you now that, there's services within the police when they respond to those situations where even in some police will override the victim's wish and put in what they call a domestic violence protection notice, a DVPN, which will give the victim 28 days. It's like a non-molestation order, but it's
Before
just
you.
just before you are then able to get one. So there, at least there are those sort of support services in place. But I've seen situations where even within that 28 days, they will still break it because they don't really know the system, they don't know anybody, and the man is all they know.
And I think isolation as well is not even just, it doesn't just also happen in that scenario where they don't know other people. I think sometimes it's the fact that their network is so intertwined.
Oh yeah,
The
yeah,
network, so everyone we know and associate with is together.
yes.
So leaving that marriage almost feels like I'm
You're
leaving
being
not just
ostracized.
you, but I'm leaving everybody
You live in a
else.
community,
So I think that's something that keeps people.
and if the mindset is similar, then you're seen as a bit of, should I say, an outcast,
Yeah.
you know, and they're like, it's not that deep. What are we not seeing? Why are you making a big force out of nothing? So it's those little things that doesn't necessarily help women to escape that. It takes a very, very, very determined and strong woman. Some have left. I think what has been really helpful as well is here now there is now that understanding of the different cultures and how they play into. So there are a lot of organizations now that are really promoting those, victim support from a culturally acceptable perspective. So domestic abuse services that are really, promote, they will support Black women, African women. There are loads of organizations like that
In the
in
UK.
the UK. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So when those women, because they understand the culture, they understand those barriers, and they have support services that they can signpost these women to that can really help them to find their feet, you know,
So
which is
how
fantastic.
accessible are these services when the domestic abuse is not physical? Because I feel like, because the physical one is the one that you can evidence very easily
Yeah,
to whoever
yeah.
it is.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like you can access support easier.
Mm.
But where it's, emotional, it's financial, it's a bit more difficult to evidence. If you're someone who has never worked, for example, you've had aspiration to work, but you cannot evidence that I don't earn because my husband made me stop. you never did.
Mm.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but if it's that you were working before and say it stopped on X day because he said
Yeah.
you can evidence it. So I think those are the ones that really, really struggle to get out of it, because if you're dealing with a narcissist, he knows how
Oh
to
yeah.
behave
Of
outside.
course. Yeah. Even even they're so good at what they do that even professionals sometimes miss those vital points,
Mm.
where you go, they're so sweet, so the way they there's the way they present themselves that you now be like, "Ah, you're probably the one that's got the problem. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
This guy is fantastic." But in saying that, there's a lot of awareness now around those things, and there's a lot of research around different cultures and how these things play out within communities. So there's even like push now to go into actual communities to educate women and to educate leaders within those communities, like churches, mosques, temples, just to get people to, because the truth is sometimes these things might not necessarily always be reported. But if people have that understanding within the communities, then the support can be there and the empathy can be different.
Mhm.
Where the support can be within the community, where they can try and step in and support. Because what you tend to find is, for example, one of the things that I struggle with a lot with some cultures is they don't necessarily, because we tend to want to find out who's within your network, who's within your support network, how can we support you, who, if we weren't involved, who would you run to, who would you support,
Mhm.
who will step in to help you out in this. And many of them will tell you straight that they can't share because it's a thing of shame to have professionals like me involved. So they won't tell you, but you know that there are people that are helping them. You know that there are people that, for example, that if something happened, this is somebody else can pick up that child from school, or somebody else they can go and stay in crisis. They can go and stay with X, Y, and Z person, but they will never share who those people are because it's a shame. It's a shame. It's a thing. There's a stigma within that community for things like that.
Or there's a stigma of working with social
With social
services.
services, with the police, and actually there's the added stigma of domestic abuse being reported as well, because they don't see it as that. Like the things that are not physical is those are the harder parts
Yeah,
to
that's
evidence.
that's
So
it.
you going and saying that my husband treats me like this and I don't like it, you're almost then seen as you're being a rebellious or ungrateful wife, especially if your husband is the one working. But, you're so ungrateful. This after everything that this man is doing for you, you're not showing appreciation. But and only I think only recently has coercive control been included in the law of domestic abuse.
Yes,
Only
yes.
very recently, even in this, I think it was last year. I
It was
think.
last year. I
Yeah.
remember the landmark case that they used for that as well. It was this woman who actually killed her husband, but he'd been abusing her mentally for years, and it was her children. Had two sons that actually fought for her. I forget the lady's name now. Who fought for her to say yes, she killed him, but it shouldn't be murder, but manslaughter, because
Mm,
she was driven to where she was or to do what she did because of years and years and years of
yeah.
abuse. And it's crazy. I think one other thing that I've noticed from my work in court as a reason why people stay in this system is that's all they know.
Yeah.
That is all they know.
Yeah.
So they've been supported, they've been giving everything,
But they keep going
but they
back.
keep going back.
Either they keep going back or they change
Find the same guy,
same
different.
similar.
I just got the same guy, different face.
Yeah. Similar.
But that's all their parents were in an abusive relationship. So from the beginning, they've seen that as normal. So they find a guy who does that. In fact, I've heard of one who got into a relationship with somebody who wasn't beating her, and she became the abuser.
Oh yeah. That's
She now
very
started beating the man, but violence must be present in
in
that
that
relationship.
relationship because that's kind of that's all she knows. That's and for some of these women, it's of some of the people that are either abusers or abused, it's because they've grown up with it. It was something that they were probably exposed to as children. And so that chaos has been present for them their entire lives. So disrupting that, it really takes a lot of boldness and self awareness and recognition to be determined to disrupt that aspect of your life and say, actually, I want different. I deserve different. And actually, I know some women that have successfully been able to do it. I mean, again, here, there's this thing called Clare's Law,
Mm-hmm.
where, it allows you to, if you start a new relationship, or if you've always been a victim of domestic abuse, or just generally, and you just decide, I'm starting a new relationship and I want information on my new partner, you can approach the police and they will give you information about them, and then you can make your decision whether you choose to remain in that relationship or not.
Yeah, so that's Claire's law. So if you contact the police, if you're concerned about, the history,
Yeah, if you want to know
if you
about the
want to
history. Yeah.
know, please contact, and you're in the UK, please contact the police and tell them you want to find this information under Claire's law, and they would direct you. But I think we've touched on something here that I want us to also expand on a little bit, which is domestic abuse in men, because that's another thing. And I think in our society, a man will never admit that his wife is abusing him.
No, I mean, generally, I think even here, there's a very low, sort of, very, the report is really low for
Mhm.
men, generally. And I think, again, it goes back to that societal, should I say, understanding, or what a man is, what is masculinity, and women are seen to be the softer, the ones that are supposed to be, you know, cared for type thing.
Egg.
Yeah. So for a man, it's I can imagine the strength it would take for any man to go and report that he's being abused. It would take a lot. I think even within, surprisingly, even within gay relationships as well, they do struggle to report domestic abuse. So it's really interesting. I think generally there's just that understanding of, or should I say, how society feeds that masculinity, and a man needs to be strong. A man needs to be seen to not be vulnerable. So how are you being beaten? Who is beating you?
You can't even say it with your fellow men that
No,
my wife is beating me. And it's not, I don't think it's even necessarily because the woman is stronger. It's sometimes it's just that's
you feel helpless because if
exactly.
you then retaliate, you
It's not
know,
seen the same
it's
way.
no,
Or he can't even bring himself to hit a woman.
yeah,
And another point is just that also just goes to show that a big part of domestic abuse is mental. So even that man is physically strong enough to withstand the woman,
yeah,
but it's here.
yeah,
She has controlled his mind so much
yeah,
that he can't hit her back.
yeah.
So I think for people who judge women who are in domestic abuse situations, maybe let that sink in a little bit. That a lot of the work is done here
It's a mental thing.
before he even hits her. I'm sure, or the common one we always ask is, did you not see that at the start of the relationship?
The red flags,
Did you not see all the red flags? The signs were probably there, but if you're dealing with a real abuser, they know how they will hide
of
it.
course.
They will almost mask it and wrap it with
But
love.
that's what that love bombing, the whole narcissism thing comes in, the gaslighting, all of these words, these things, we didn't know them. We
Definitely.
knew that something isn't right, but you don't have the lingua for it, you don't have the language for it, you don't know what it is. But now where, there's so much research, there's so much information out there that, and if you just know something isn't right, then it's not right. No matter how much you try and make it fit, it doesn't fit.
Yeah, love bombing. That's another one I had to learn
Yeah.
because that's the one I learned in starting. Because I didn't think showing love can be a sign of,
Oh,
it could be a sign of abuse, but that's over over expression of the love, you know. So um what's the term, the right, how to describe it properly, love bombing, just in case there's someone who doesn't listening to us that doesn't understand what it is.
So for a lot of domestic abusers, it always happens just before or after they've abused the woman, and sometimes with either mostly physical. When they've battered you or whatever, then the love bombing comes in. Oh, I'm so sorry. What do you want? They buy you gifts, buy you presents, they make you feel loved, and it's like you almost can't breathe because you don't have the time to process what has just happened. Before now, you're being showered with all this affection. And then it's like a cycle. It just keeps going round and then it happens again.
So the reason why I'm saying I've asked Pam to sort of describe it as well is just so that if you're in that sort of situation, you can understand what it is and start to pick up the signs. Because if you're in it and your husband or your wife or your partner has, hit you or done something and is now showing you love, you very often think, oh, he
It's
or she is
changed.
sorry,
Oh, he has
they've
changed.
changed, and all of that.
And there's always, sorry to say that, sorry to jump in there as well. There's always that promise to change.
Yeah,
It will never happen again.
exactly.
But never, never, never
Never ever.
comes.
So if you find yourself in that cycle, that's what it's called. That's what it is. You're in that cycle of love bombing. And if you're in the UK, you need to speak up. There is support here. And I believe in Nigeria, there's also, or in Africa generally, maybe not as widely, um, it's not as
I know
wide as this, but
there's a
there
lot of
is a lot of,
awareness. And actually, if you're listening in and you know any organizations that are supporting women, please share, and we will share it on our platforms as well. We'll also look into it because this is a an aspect that is quite dear to myself and Uju. So yeah, definitely we would like to inform, empower, because this is 2024. We need women and men who are also experiencing this as well. And I think what will be actually interesting is hopefully at some point we might be able to get a man's perspective on this particular issue, how it is for a man, because all we can do is assume that we know. But it would be good to hear from a man's perspective, why it's not spoken about as
why
much.
men don't speak about it. Um, that would be that's key to hear from that side of the table. Why you, so that's for someone who's been
Well,
abused.
not necessarily. I mean, as a woman, we can, to some degree, even though we might not say it's probably our experience, but for women that have gone through it, why did they stay? To some degree, I think we can understand because it's our culture to some degree. Just again,
Yeah,
so not
and I've
necessarily a
spoken
survivor, but
to,
just
yeah,
it'll be good to get what a man who's been through it, but it might not admit it. But yeah, it'll be good to hear just generally a man's perspective on it.
100%. But I've got one question to round off. Do you think a man can be abused emotionally or physically?
I think
Domestic abuse, yeah? Because why I say that in our cultural context, why I say that is because we have this culturally perception that a man is a provider, right? So at what point is a man being financially abused? Does that make sense?
okay. Well, again, I can't speak too much on that because I'm not a man.
Mm,
But I think just looking at it from generally what is financial abuse,
mm,
right? Um, I think absolutely anyone can be abused, a man or a woman. It might look different for a man, whereby a woman just takes advantage of him because he's seen to be really nice, be really kind, and she's obviously quite a toxic person. So she will just take full advantage of him. And she isolates him as well from his
his
friends, from
friends.
his family members. You just notice he's really different with everyone else. And people don't know him to be that kind of person. So I would say absolutely it's definitely it's possible. Yeah.
But I think in our context, it will be much harder to pick up on
Oh yeah.
because it is expected that you're going to financially support
Yeah.
your woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I'm where I'm getting to with
But
that.
I think that there would always be that toxic aspect that you cannot fully hide from, I mean, the from the abuser.
Yeah. So I think it's some people are good at masking, but I think you hit the point there. So if you notice from a guy's perspective that he's no longer behaving like himself since he got into relationship with this woman, then those are the signs, because it's easy to mask financial and emotional abuse because we are used to women being mouthy, for example. Oh, my wife talks a lot. It's like, you know how women are now, she's just mouthy.
Yeah.
Or you know how women are, you have to look after her. That's the evidence. So men may miss the signs that they are in that level of
Or
toxicity
might not
in a
even
marriage.
accept, even if they recognize it, they might not accept. There's one thing to recognize, another thing to accept.
100%.
So yeah.
So, guys, watch out for your male friends, family members. If you're seeing very obvious changes to his personality and to his behavior, it could be a sign that he's going through something and may need help.
Yeah.
Okay? So, on that note, I think we're
It's a,
going to wrap up this episode.
oh,
I think you've got our quote for us
oh,
today.
I have. Oh, okay. Let me see. Okay, actually, I like this one. I'll read both, but I'll like this one. So, I believe in being strong when everything seems to be going wrong. I believe that happy girls are the prettiest girls. I believe that tomorrow is another day, and I believe in miracles.
Oh, that's a nice one. Who's that from?
Who's Audrey Hepburn?
Audrey Hepburn. Okay.
Yeah, really, really, really good. And then the other one is be messy and complicated and afraid and show up anyways. So whatever life throws at you, keep moving. You got this. And until next time, please subscribe, share, like, and please, guys, honestly, we really love to hear what you have to say. We really want to engage with you guys on that level. So if there's anything that we've discussed on any of our topics, please share your thoughts, your views. We'd love to hear.